Hello and welcome to Why Wasn't It Better? I'm your host, Patrick Darms.
And I'm your co-host, Anton Paras.
On this episode, we're heading back to high school with Spider-Man Homecoming. After years of being stuck in Sony's reboot cycle, Spider-Man finally made his long-awaited arrival in the Marvel Cinematic Universe following his scene-stealing debut in Captain America: Civil War. Expectations were sky high. This was the character many fans considered the crown jewel of Marvel, finally joining the biggest franchise in Hollywood. Today's episode is quite special because not only are we joined by a veteran guest, but he is someone who also happens to have worked on this particular film. Ivan Calixto, welcome back to the pod, sir.
Ooh, industry professional Ivan Calixto.
Oof! I can actually speak about this.
Oh, so excited.
So just minor adjustment. I worked on the trailer and marketing material for this.
So you worked on it. You worked on it.
Sure, no, but they're credited separately. That's why I wanna have a distinction there. Yeah, no, this was an interesting project. I don't want to cut you guys off before you finish your intro, though.
No, that was the intro.
Oh, okay, great.
Ivan, you have close connections with this film. I know you're a Spider-Man fan. That might be underselling it. Are you also from the same neighborhood as Spider-Man?
That depends on who's writing him, I guess. Hang on one second.
We hear sirens in the background, just like Spider-Man would in his
neighborhood. Yeah, no, I am not. I feel like my neighborhood neighbors, right? Because Spider-Man's from Forest Hills, but depending on there's a couple times where he's from Long Island City, apparently, but we're just gonna keep him in Forest Hills for the sake of this conversation. So no, I'm not.
Are you in Brooklyn right now or Queens?
I'm in Queens.
Okay.
Yeah. No Brooklyn for me.
It's okay. We won't hold that against you.
Yeah, I'm not from Brooklyn or Queens either, so it's okay.
I think the biggest piece of little bit of pride in me that takes place. So I helped put together the first trailer to this movie, and the one thing to maybe ID what trailer this was is the one with the song "Time to Pretend" by The Management. That's and the only reason why I remember that very distinctly is how long it took for us to get to the point where it's like, oh, this is a song that's going to be playing for the trailer. It was my first time working for something this big, and I didn't realize how complicated and but fun, the process was, and just how seriously, I guess, the Marvel machine takes making sure that things are kept secret. Exactly how many people are hounding you for hey, you better not say nothing. It was a very, very interesting process to go through, and gave me, I think, my first taste of something that I'm like, all right, well, this is something I'm really proud to be working on, and having something that people are actually going to see versus at that point a bunch of little small spec commercials here and there, or independent film projects and all that. Nothing that had a ton of eyeballs on it. So definitely a little bit of a pat on the back moment for myself back then.
Yeah, I can understand that. How did you come to be a part of it?
Yeah, so at that point, I had been interning for a couple of years for a couple different places. So just to kind of backtrack, I started interning at NBC when I was in film school, and I started making a couple connections. Basically, you just start to talk to folks, see where they're at a couple of years down the road. You kind of keep in touch with a multitude of people. Up until that point, I had started working full-time on my marketing gig, so I wasn't really doing film and TV full-time anymore. But occasionally I'd get called about hey, we have this, we have a commercial we need to cut. I think the biggest thing I did before that was Pop-Tarts. I had 7 different Pop-Tart spots that that I had put together. But there was a need that came out from a trailer house, and a buddy of mine, his name is Lucas, he was working for trailer park, and I am not entirely sure what came about it or what exactly happened, but they had a need to have someone working on a project for that weekend, and there wasn't a lot of communication as to what was going on. I was just like, you know what, I could use the extra money, let's do it. So I hopped in, and lo and behold, it turns out to be this. And up until that point, it was a lot of oh cool, I'll pick up a drive edit it maybe at home and do a couple little revisions here and there, but nothing too big. It doesn't involve a lot of eyeballs on it. This was a little bit more different from the start. It was pretty much, here, sign this. We're going to give you a little workstation here. You're going to be working with these people. It was a team of people that would basically be there. Anything that you needed to change from the footage that's given to you needs to get approved. There's a whole approval process. I had been working for a couple different trailer houses. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the trailer houses, but they're basically, most of the time, a movie studio will offload that work for cutting the actual trailer out to these different places that handle specifically marketing videos and deliverables for folks. Those are the places that generally handle them. Now, sometimes they want to keep it in-house, especially when there's a lot of secrecy behind it or something. But sometimes there's a mix of the two. So what ends up happening is there's a studio rep that has to constantly be monitoring the progress of whatever trailer is getting cut. Sometimes it's because marketing has this big idea on when they're going to drop it and how it's going to look like and exactly what the tempo is going to feel like. And then other times they're just very hands-off and they're like, here's the footage. And so
I got a quick question. Sorry to interrupt. Was the marketing rep, was it clearly someone from Disney or Sony?
No, so that's what would make this interesting. It was a Sony rep, but clearly there was a lot of sign off from Disney because approval would take a much longer time than normal. So usually it's just one studio. And again, this is a very unique setup, right? We have Marvel and Sony kind of fighting a little bit. I say fighting because I did see a lot of disagreement that kind of came, or I venture to guess that that's what it was, because we would get instruction to do one thing and within a couple of days it's I actually dropped that, we're actually taking it this route.
Interesting. So timeline wise, how long before the actual film release was this?
I want to say around 6 or 7 months before is when it started.
Pretty close. I mean, I wouldn't have thought, but that's really interesting.
Yeah, no, that we went through, I want to say 7 cuts of it. And I know that a lot of the others cuts basically were repurposed for trailers down the road. But this was it was definitely unusual, because most of the time, again, I've worked on other movie trailers before at that point, but it was never that somebody kind of breathing down your neck and being like, "Hey, we don't want to see this."
Can you describe the room for us? You're literally, is it a small room? Is it what, you go into this building in downtown Manhattan and then they lock it behind you and you just have someone with a Sony badge? It's you can't get past me unless I look at everything you're working on.
No, it's not like that. I think it's more so of, I think when you sign, first off, when you sign their NDAs, it's a little bit more of a, and I'm not sure how much of this I could kind of go into, but basically in brief, the NDA for this sort of project, and I imagine anything else that Disney's kind of touching, just from experience, is very much a hey, give us your social handles. We want to know what kind of social media presence you have. If it's a project like this where they're taking it really seriously, they definitely do their homework too on you, just to kind of see hey, I've seen people get let go for talking or mentioning some sort of aspect, because you never know what's more of a spoiler than you maybe know, I guess, at the point, or what's more hypersensitive to know. In terms of the setup for the actual thing, we were split up, so there's 4 of us that were working on this trailer, and I think from the start it was basically hey, here's a rough idea of the way that we want to show you, and I think one of us ended up doing more of a flashy cut, more action scenes and the sort. And then another one was more of a story-driven trailer, so little bits and pieces here and there. We weren't even told the plot of the full film. It was just more so here's a brief outline. And I think it was more so the main premise of it is here's Spider-Man being. I'm trying to look up and see what my notes were from back then, but it was very, very brief. It was very much, the idea is to convey that we want to have Spider-Man entering the MCU, so a lot of the trailer should feel hey, this is the very we want to have lighthearted cuts, so select lighthearted moments from the reels that were shared with us, and intersplice it with some action scenes here and there. But we were never we couldn't really go too full on out with the description of any sort of plot. So we can't, even though there were a couple scenes shared, we couldn't use certain bits of dialogue. You can't have too much Tony Stark. You can't have too much of the ending sequence, which at that point they would split it out, right? Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And they're like, here's where this scene more or less fits in. But yeah, so it was a lot. It was a lot. We went through a lot of different cuts. I don't think I've ever, even to this day, I don't think I've had as many revisions as we did for that. And then I think what ended up kind of solidifying this a little bit more is like the selection of like, oh, like here's the the music themes that we have cleared, and they range from like Marvel music tracks to like this like Danny Elfman style generic track. It wasn't Danny Elfman himself. And then a couple different songs that we could use. It wasn't like you're approved to use. But the team had kind of settled on the song "Time to Pretend," and we're like, okay, if we get clearance for that, then we could cut the trailer to be a little bit more to that, right? Like, there's different ways of cutting like spots, and to me, I was used to like if you're gonna use a song, you should be cutting every cut should probably align with some sort of beat in the song, and it ended up being that, and that's what kind of helped splice it together a little bit more towards the end. And then in terms of approvals, it was very much like anytime you finished any sort of cut, you'd basically ping up the rep, schedule some time with them, sit down, and they'll say, "Yeah, this looks good," or "No, I'd rather," or "You're going a little too far with this," or "We want to cut back on these scenes." Maybe we don't want certain pieces of dialogue out there. Like those sort of notes kind of changed as we went on. And I think all in all, it didn't take too long to put it all together. At the end, every cut would be done like about 2 to 3 weeks time,
So
more or less.
I mean, I think a lot of people remember this. There were the big Sony leaks, of course, that happened, and I'm curious, did any feedback from the Sony rep, did it reflect a bit of the direction for Spider-Man that was seen in the Sony leaks?
I think the only thing that we kind of got from that is like there's a preciousness to Sony, and I'm assuming through Marvel because of that too. That the choice of either music track or like the way that we're cutting, it can't be too. You can't use too many quick cuts because to the audience it might feel like a little too brash or violent, and you also don't want to linger on any violent shots. Although I don't think that was an issue with this. There were generic directions for the character.
There really aren't any violent shots in this film,
right? Like, and it's also like one of those things where like I feel there's footage that was shown to us that didn't make the final cut, and we'll get into it as we talk about the movie, but I don't think I recall, and I remember one of the notes being like, you can't show him throwing a punch that lands directly on someone's face.
Wait, whoa! So you got working on this trailer, you got to see unreleased footage?
It wasn't crazy amount, but yeah, like the shocker
awesome.
The shocker scene at the end,
Oh,
that little brief fight. Yeah, there was a lot more to that.
with the school buses.
Yeah, there was a lot more to that. It was a lot more dialogue heavy. I feel like maybe like a tenth of what was shown to us ultimately got used for that, because that was a really quick scene too in the movie.
It's very brief. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
maybe a minute or two. It's not much.
Yeah, the guy has a lot more dialogue.
Joaquin Woodbine.
Yeah, he had a lot more taunting and all that, and there was a couple different details too of like Peter masked versus being unmasked during that time. And then what else was there? I think the neatest detail I feel like I remember seeing is the fact that like the suit is very CGI, right? But there was a practical version of the suit, and to me, I thought there were some shots where I'm like, if they would have used it without the CG, it probably would have looked a little bit better. To me, at least, just because I'm less of a fan of the very starked up suits and more of I like to see the more traditional, like Toby and Andrew type suits.
Yeah, you want them running around in silk.
Yes, basically. But yeah, the working on the trailer was fun. It was very challenging to kind of keep a secret and not say anything. I think that was the big thing for a long time.
I'm curious, do you know what lengths Disney or Sony would go if they did find out that you'd leak something?
At the risk of
At the risk of them doing exactly that to you, you're just going to speculate.
no, because so I've kept in touch with a number of folks that worked on. I'll talk about No Way Home because I feel like it's a couple of years now, but I didn't work on any of those films afterwards, but until now. But the stuff that came out for No Way Home, I don't know if you guys were paying any attention to that stuff, but there was a lot of leaks that came out for No Way Home.
Right.
There was a trailer that got leaked, an unfinished trailer. And one thing that I think I talked to you, Anton, about it was like one of the things, like when they're sharing stuff that you're like, hey, here's just for context so that you know this while you're editing the trailer. Here's a quick scene or here's a quick look at something. They'll label your footage so that it has some sort of unique identifier because there's a bunch of different like
Watermark
data. Yeah. Well, for them, it wasn't a straight out watermark. It was more so, if I remember correctly, they would have like a little code outline at the bottom. And there's very lengthy like letters and numbers. But the last three values would change depending on who you're sending it to. So that if that ever ended up online and you happen to catch those last three, they know exactly who leaked it.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if I can interject real quick. There's a distinct difference between someone leaking spoilers versus content. And how they would, and how Disney or Sony or whoever would handle that is quite different for both. If you leak spoilers, you're probably just going to get fired. You leak content, different story.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys are familiar with what's going on right now with Avatar Paramount stuff.
It seems pretty big.
Well, that's like the worst case.
Yeah, well,
scenario.
That guy leaked content, to your point. So he's going to prison. Like they're pressing charges, all that.
I think it's the complete film that was leaked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was bad. It's bad. But in that case, yes, they'll press charges. They'll come at you, come hell and high water. Like they will come after you if you spoil something. I've seen people be let go. I don't think I've heard of anybody at this point being like threatened with like prison time or something, like something super serious. That being said, your reputation gets tarnished,
right?
And so
you could get blacklisted.
Who's going to work with you?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, after that, it's just reality TV for you. That's what it comes out to.
Long Island Medium, a different version of hell.
Those epic commercials.
Oh, God. Yeah, I've been sentenced to those epic commercials. Although that was a willing sentence.
Right. So, Ivan, you're doing something similar now for the upcoming Spider-Man, right? Brand New Day.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm working on marketing material for Brand New Day. I can't share exactly everything that I'm doing. I look forward to sharing that at some point. Yeah. I'll probably let you guys know at some point, but once it's out. But it's fun stuff, and a lot of this stuff is kind of scratching my nostalgia a bit more than when I was doing stuff for Homecoming. I have a very distinct memory of like watching these like little crossover promotions and stuff for Spider-Man 2 back in the day, the Tobey Maguire movie. So to get to do some of that, I feel like that's pretty safe to say. Like to get to do some of that for this film has been pretty cool, and definitely a little different, a lot less consequential, but also like it's more of a chilled environment where you're not really. The stakes aren't quite as high, or you can't, there's not going to be that many people being like, you can't do that, or no, you got to take it this way. Like it's a little bit more like liberating, I guess, for you.
Well, just huge congrats. I mean, it's so awesome to know how you're on the ground floor working on this huge Spider-Man film. But then at the same time, all the work that you've done in the past, it's it's just really, really cool for us to have your lens, your expertise, and just your willingness to share all of that. So thank you. Now I have one more question on my end. Super silly question. Being involved with trailer work or just being involved with the production in any sense, what kind of perks did you get? Or were you offered any perks at all, either from Sony, from Disney? Was there like maybe a release party that you got invited to because you'd worked on the trailer?
There were advanced screenings that we had access to, and like I think test screenings to a certain extent, but it wasn't anything flashy or like, hey, come to the premiere sort of thing, because I think the edit house did get invited to that, But we definitely weren't.
No,
We
no.
weren't added to the list of
Tom
it.
Holland didn't give you a personalized thank you card.
No, heck no. I do think though on a curious note for that, like I feel like work for in edit houses, like a lot of times the way that you see the credit pop up for these on like IMDb or like the actual movie credits, like they'll thank the trailer house. But there's so many people involved, and I feel like I wish there was more of a recognition of that, I guess, in the industry. They do the same thing with SFX houses. There's a lot of people on the post side of things that I feel like don't get the flowers they deserve. I'm not talking about myself, like, but I'm talking about like the people that go in there and like plug away for hours and hours just to give us some of that work. I know, like we've talked about it on the pod in a couple other movies, but especially the CG folks, like when the CG is not up to par, you know right away, and it's really evident. And when it's good, I feel like we rarely ever really talk about it. We'll just like, oh, it was good, but it's like such stressful work, and that's the one thing on Hollywood's end that I wish people knew about a little bit more. Whether it's like you're editing this really cool trailer, or like are the person responsible for like that 5-minute MCU fight sequence where everything looked insane. We can definitely see subpar work, and with the recent like layoffs that happened at Marvel Studios, I think it's just unfortunate that we're probably gonna skew a little bit more into non-human stuff.
Yeah, AI.
Yeah.
But they can afford to give Robert Downey Jr. $100 million.
Well, I mean, he's got to have his trailer, you know.
Right. I mean,
Yeah, he's have to have his mansion trailer.
Right.
His masseuse and all. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, that's the last bit I wanted to share on that.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sprinkle in more as we go along. This is I'm loving this. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, then this film, Anton, was released on the 7th of July, 2017. Oh, look at that, 777. I wonder if that was deliberate on the marketing department's part. It was made by Columbia Pictures, Marvel Studios, and Pascal Pictures, distributed by Sony Pictures Releasing, not Disney. As you said, Ivan, this has a very special setup, unlike any other Marvel film, because it's, I mean, I guess Marvel fans know this, but I think it is worth repeating. This is not a Marvel property. This is a Sony property.
Yeah, Spider-Man is essentially the child of divorced parents in this kind of deal. So the custody rights of the character, I think, are very much, it's a very unique situation. I don't think we've seen that at least in modern times. Right? Like, I feel like we could maybe say that about Godzilla a little bit, but
yeah, those rules have changed over time. We're in like the most recent, I guess, version of those contract rights, of those divorced parent rights, have a few loopholes built in.
Yeah. I think we're, what is it, like? I'm pretty sure it's public knowledge, but like there's negotiations for the third agreement right now happening. So it just, as great as I feel like just getting one of these movies done is a feat all on its own.
Yeah,
and it's so many movie pieces for it.
The third negotiation hinges on rights for the Kingpin.
So this was directed by John Watts. The screenplay was written by Jonathan Goldstein, John Francis Daly, John Watts, Christopher Ford, Chris McKenna, and Eric Sommers. It stars Tom Holland, Michael Keaton, Jon Favreau, Zendaya, Jacob Batalon, Laura Harrier, Tony Revolori, Bokeem Woodbine, Tyne Daly, Marissa Tomei, and Robert Downey Jr. The budget was $175 million. That is $232 million adjusted for inflation. Box office was $881 million. That is $1.16 billion adjusted for inflation. This has a very impressive 92% Rotten Tomato score. Ivan, we're not going to ask you why you wanted to be on this episode. I think you've made it quite clear why we wanted you for this. This was a big deal when it came out. You know, Ivan, you were one of the guests on Civil War, and we talked about how excited everybody was to see Spider-Man in the MCU. And I have to say, I was excited too, even though I'm not as big of a comic fan as you guys, but Spider-Man is my favorite Marvel character. I've always liked Spider-Man. I'm a big fan of the first two Tobey Maguire films. They're
Mm-hmm.
really great superhero films, especially the second one. That's still to this day in the ocean of superhero films that we've gotten since. It's still one of the best ones. The Andrew Garfield iteration, I thought the first one was okay. I liked him. He was a good Spider-Man, I thought. He wasn't the issue with those films. The second one was a mess. And, like we're probably going to talk about on this episode and others, Sony just did not really know what to do with Spider-Man after that. So when this film was coming, everybody was excited for it. And it did very well. And now Spider-Man is officially a part of the MCU.
Forever and ever.
Until Sony yanks him back, I guess.
I mean, Sony's got their hands full. They're gonna try to. They'll have to eventually do a reboot revival of the Spider-Man villains universe now that they've closed the chapter with Venom.
Have to is the key thing there. I feel like.
Yeah, have to.
Well,
this is the 16th film in the MCU, by the way, and this is part of Phase 3, right? Or this is Phase 2. Why didn't I write that down? I usually write that down for these.
This film was officially in Phase 3.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, I thought so. My note on this is, after years of watching Sony fumble the character like village idiots, it felt like the character was finally back in the hands of adults.
Yeah, look, Sony's still going to fumble how to use Spider-Man or Spider-Man characters. That's just...
I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but it didn't seem like it was that easy to screw up. Like, they did such a wonderful job with the first two Tobey films, and then it seemed like they got greedy on the third one. They tried to put way too much stuff in it. It seemed like with the Andrew Garfield films, they just didn't know where they wanted to take it. How do you mess this up? This is such a beloved character. This isn't some obscure comic character. Would you say Spider-Man is one of the three biggest comic book characters of all time with Batman and Superman? Probably, right?
I agree with that.
Yeah, like, how do you mess this up?
Well, I think, like, you've basically given us our answer. It's, if you have such a large character, there's an amount of weight and expectation that the populace, that audiences expect to have with a big release like Spider-Man. So sometimes it's living up to those expectations can be tough, but if anything's been apparent, it's sometimes studios get in their own way a lot of the time.
Spider-Man is not the only thing that Sony has fumbled.
Yeah.
Without being too mean.
Money gets in the way of it, right? Like, I feel like that's what it comes down to for Sony. Who was it? Avi Arad, and then we had Amy Pascal. That were the largest voices in this. Mm-hmm. And I guess to a certain extent, before the MCU, it was Ike Perlmutter, who had a lot of involvement with some of these before.
What was he? The head of the creative committee? Is that what it was called?
He was head of Marvel Studios in general, I think, in the beginning, and then they made him, I think, head of everything but the movies. He was Kevin Feige's boss for a while.
Was he
and then
also editor-in-chief?
No, he wasn't editor-in-chief. But I think everything kind of reported to him to an extent.
Feige staged a coup and took control.
Disney was kind of like...
Kind of,
yeah.
They would never phrase it that way, but let's just say one day Feige found himself with more power.
Yeah, look, if Warner Brothers can fumble Batman,
great
Sony
point.
Can realistically fumble Spider-Man.
They found a way to screw up Batman somehow.
Yeah.
I think once Spider-Man started earning money at the box office, it became a question of like, well, how big do we want to go, and how much of a bag do we want for the future?
How big can we make Ned? Can we make Ned his own thing? Can we give him a film?
They might as well. I mean, they gave everybody a spin-off in the last couple years. Although I feel like that has more to do with the rights agreement than anything else, because I think they have to self-produce a movie every couple of years, or they lose the license to the rights to the characters altogether.
And just think, it could have been another parallel universe. It could be Amazon that has the rights, because MGM had the rights until '99, and they swapped the rights with Sony for Casino Royale. And obviously, Amazon...
That would have been freaky.
Just imagine that. Amazon obviously ended up acquiring MGM years and years later, but there's a parallel universe where Amazon has the Spider-Man rights.
It's not going to be this episode, but eventually, I'm sure, we'll bring up the whole, the whole muck that is why Universal Studios in Orlando still has Marvel characters, but they're from the 90s.
Oh, dude.
Like
I could talk hours about
that's
that.
fascinating to me. Yeah.
Let's get into the production history, but first, we will have to talk about the 6 degrees of Warren Beatty's sex life, which is our prevailing theory that all films can be connected via the sexual conquest of Warren Beatty. Michael Keaton is our connector here. By way of Jack Nicholson, by way of Diane Keaton and or Michelle Phillips. So Keaton obviously was in Batman with Jack Nicholson, who dated Michelle Phillips and Diane Keaton, both of whom dated Warren Beatty. This is a really cool connection because it involves another superhero, an iconic superhero movie.
That's right.
Production history for this. Ivan, feel free to chime in with any nuggets of info that you may have. So obviously from the early days of the MCU, Marvel had been trying to figure out how to get Spider-Man back. It seemed impossible at the time, since the rights are and still are owned by Sony, obviously. Anton, you were hinting at this earlier. Following the November 2014 Sony hack, emails between Sony Pictures Entertainment co-chairman Amy Pascal and President Doug Belgrad were released, stating that Sony wanted Marvel to produce a new trilogy of Spider-Man films while Sony retained, quote, creative control, marketing, and distribution, end quote. Sidebar for any of the listeners, the leaks are out, available publicly. The emails are entertaining to read. Let's just say that, especially the Pascal stuff, especially the stuff that maybe she said about one of the former presidents. Just going to leave it there.
Some of the Spider-Man stuff is also really blatant and hilarious, but yeah,
it is clear from those emails, like they really did not know what to do with Spider-Man.
They didn't know what to do with Spider-Man, and all conversation is also no concept of political correctness.
No, it doesn't. I'm glad you said that. I don't want to, I remain hopeful about Amy Pascal because she is one of the people who is running the new Amazon iteration of James Bond. So let's pray that she doesn't mess this up. So this idea was brought to Sony by Marvel. Discussions broke out and Sony was determined to proceed with their own film. So there was a breakdown in this communication for a while. And if you want more details on it, check out The Reign of MCU, written by, hold on, let me get this right. So The Reign of Marvel Studios, written by Joanna Robinson, Dave Gonzalez, and Gavin Edwards, has a lot of great information about this subject. If any of the listeners are curious, we've mentioned this book plenty of times on the podcast, Anton. Definitely read it if you're into this stuff. Where was I in the notes here? So by early 2015, it was announced that they would release a new Spider-Man film with Kevin Feige and Pascal producing. By this point, she was no longer employed by Sony. She had her own company called Pascal Pictures. Don't worry about Amy. She ended up just fine. Both studios have the ability to terminate the agreement at any point, and no money was exchanged with the deal, at least not initially. Eventually, money did change hands. Marvel was granted full control of Spider-Man's merchandising rights in exchange for a one-time payment of $175 million to Sony and paying up to $35 million for each future film rather than receiving their previous 5% of a Spider-Man film's revenue. Marvel could now reduce their $35 million payment if the co-produced film grossed more than $750 million.
Which they did.
Yeah, they did. Marvel, shouldn't surprise anyone. Marvel more or less came out on the winning end of this. I don't know, depending on how you look at it. Like Sony still has the rights to the character, and it's a cash cow for them.
I feel like Sony gets the better deal here because for the most part, they're kicking back a little bit and letting Marvel do most of the complex work on it, and then they're like
cashing in.
They're cashing in after.
I think you're probably right, and just for the simple reason of it's Sony's Columbia banner that appears first when the film starts. It's not Marvel.
Yeah.
So I feel like if you can get the first logo, it's a win.
Well, there's also the fact that I believe, and I'm not sure, maybe I missed it here, but like the cost of the film for Homecoming was covered by Marvel. I'm pretty sure.
That's right. They fronted it.
Yeah, they paid the cost of the movie. So to Sony for this one in particular was like, all right, like you'll pay us, you'll pay for the production, all that. It's essentially like, what do they got to lose?
The reason why I think Marvel ultimately won is they just get Spider-Man in the MCU, and Anton, it reminds me of like Anastasia now just being considered a Disney film, even though it's not a Disney film. It's on Disney Plus now, and like everybody thinks of it as a Disney film, and nobody thinks of this as a Sony movie.
No, but I think it's also it's because of the negotiations and how they landed. There have been multiple negotiations after the
That's only the first one that I was reading. I'm sure it's changed a bit since.
Yeah, so I don't want to step on your toes if there's the 2019 renegotiation covered in the production notes, but it's just I feel like from my perspective, Sony can just sit on Spider-Man for as long as they want.
Yeah.
And
I don't see them ever giving it up. I wouldn't if I were them. There's no reason to, unless you get, I don't know, 10 billion or something.
As much as I'm sure Disney just wants to pay them to get it over with, if I was Sony, I'd never give them up. It's just not worth it.
No. Do you remember the PlayStation 3 font was the same as the Spider-Man films?
Of course.
Stuff like that.
Nat Wolff, Asa Butterfield, Tom Holland, Timothy Chalamet, and Liam James were under consideration by Sony and Marvel to play Spider-Man, with Holland and Butterfield as the frontrunners. Joseph Quinn, Chandler Riggs, and Zachary Gordon also auditioned for the role. All the actors were tested against Robert Downey Jr. to see who had the most chemistry with him. This was how Holland won the role. It was to test, of course, the on-screen romantic chemistry. By early June 2015, Jonathan Levine and Ted Melfi had become the favorites to direct the film, with Daly and Goldstein and John Watts also in consideration. On June 23rd, Marvel and Sony officially announced that Holland would star as Spider-Man and that Watts would direct the film. Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daly wrote the screenplay, saying that they wanted to make it a coming-of-age story and to make it as different as possible from the Raimi films. Inspired by their experiences working on sitcoms, the writers also looked to create a network of strong characters to surround Peter within the film. The new Spider-Man would first make his MCU debut in Captain America Civil War a year prior to the release of Homecoming. Watts noted that Stark was always a part of the film's story because of his interactions with Peter in Civil War, and Downey Jr. was paid $10 million for his involvement. After initially having to drop out of consideration, Michael Keaton ended up being cast as the villain Adrian Toomes, or otherwise known as the Vulture. During the period where he had to drop out, John Leguizamo was in talks to play the part. Marvel offered to cast Leguizamo in another role, which he declined. I'd like to assume it was to be the same clown character from Spawn. Principal photography began in June 2016.
The Violator?
Yeah, the Violator. Have you seen that, Ivan?
I actually recently saw it. Yeah.
Oh, it's nuts.
Have you ever seen the animated HBO show?
That one's really good.
Great.
It's really
great.
Really, what is it? Who plays the voice of Spawn in that one?
Keith David.
It's Keith. That's right. It's Keith David. Really good. Really, really good. Now, principal photography began in June 2016 at Pinewood Studios, Atlanta, and various locations around Atlanta. Holland said building New York sets in Atlanta was cheaper than actually filming in New York, although production eventually did end up in New York, in Queens, Brooklyn, and briefly in Manhattan for various shots. Now, principal photography wrapped in October. Presumably, it was also around this time that we get Ivan working on these trailers. So,
I think so.
What an interesting timeline.
The timeline fits. As always, we want to thank everyone for listening. If you're liking the pod and you haven't already done so, please hit the follow button, subscribe, leave comments wherever you're listening or watching, wherever you get your pods. You can follow us on Instagram, X, and best of all, Letterboxd. And if you really want to support us, we have a Patreon. You can get access to episodes a full week early and ad-free, plus some bonus content. Links to everything are in the description. Okay, it's time to talk. Why wasn't it better? For Spider-Man Homecoming. Number 1. This is what I call Disney Channel Spider-Man. And Ivan, I'm sorry if this sounds harsh.
No worries. Proceed.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in this film, but this is a very safe, sanitized version of Spider-Man. That whole thing you were mentioning about, Disney or whoever mandating that Spider-Man not be too violent. He doesn't, they don't want him to show him punching anyone in the face. I call it Disney Channel Spider-Man because for all the action in this movie, there is a distinct lack of any type of violence. He immobilizes criminals, he dodges attacks, he knocks guns away. Rarely does he hit anyone or cause real damage. Obviously, the Michael Keaton character commits acts of violence, but that's the bad guy, right? It's very different than the Spider-Man films that we grew up on.
I would agree with some of that. I see where you're coming from the Disney Channel Spider-Man sort of thing. It has a very sanitized feel to it. I think in terms of level of violence, though, or like feeling safe, I don't see it being any safer than, and I'm just talking about the first two, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man films. I feel like if I'm to look at all the Spider-Man films together, Andrew Garfield's are probably the more violent ones, just because I feel like there's a little bit more like showing of blood and close fist punching, which
Are you forgetting that in the first Spider-Man film, the Green Goblin literally turned people into spirit Halloween skeletons?
Wouldn't they disintegrate?
Yeah, that's violent.
I still want to know how that pumpkin bomb works and why that wasn't the same effect with the other times he threw that thing.
Can I elaborate on my point, though? He gets the crap beat out of him in those films, and he does beat the crap out of other people, and there's none of that in this film.
I know the end of the Tobey Maguire one definitely has it.
I can point to the ratings.
Yeah.
If this is PG-13, it's a shocking PG-13 to me. This is like a PG movie, whereas those movies were very much PG-13. There's no edge to this Spider-Man at all.
No, I do have to agree with Pat here. It's what is Spider-Man using to beat up the bad guys, quote unquote, beat up the bad guys? I mean, in the comic books, it is a lot of de-escalation, just using their webs to basically become a straitjacket on enemies. But Spider-Man doesn't really have to knock people out here. It's definitely a lot more of creativity, of just using power. Yeah, it's very techy. It's a lot of using the webs in this film. It's a lot of de-escalation fighting. He's never putting him up and then putting jujitsu holds on people. Yeah. Versus, you do look at those first two Spider-Man film. Spider-Man's punching people left and right. You get an especially brutal scene in the beginning when he's going after the person that shot Uncle Ben.
Yes.
It's presenting the character is very, very differently in how he approaches fighting. Again, now we get it. It's a lot of de-escalation, but it is very different. And I do have to admit that is pretty noticeable in this.
I think Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is very street level, as is Andrew Garfield's, right? And I feel like this version of Spider-Man is very much like there's like grander stakes outside of his sidewalk sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. It's to the point that I feel like the focus is on that versus the neighborhood he's actually supposed to be patrolling.
Right. Now, well, the stakes here are what alien weapons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. You have that, right? It's almost like I think you and I have talked about this before, but like when I'm watching the Daredevil series on Disney Plus, I'm always like, well, where's everyone else? Like,
right.
There's so much happening in New York that they've overstuffed this universe, and I feel like that's kind of what just to an extent. I feel like now looking back on it, it's more evident, right? But during the time, I feel like a lot of people were like, you know what, I'm gonna give it a pass because this is Spider-Man in the MCU. That being said, yeah, I agree. It is very sanitized, it's very safe. I'm not sure if I agree on the visually flat point. Although, like, I will say this, I do think that there's been a market improvement over the last Spider-Man movie had the web swinging, for example. Like, there's a very natural mechanic to it in Andrew Garfield's movies and Tobey Maguire's movies versus these, right? Especially the first two of this MCU trilogy. I feel like it felt a lot more computer generated. There's not as much.
It looks the same template as all the other MCU stuff. Whereas, like, again, maybe it's not entirely fair of me to compare it to the Raimi stuff. Those had a much more distinct visual style to them.
I do also think that given the age of the character for this movie, they might have felt the need to pull back on some of that also. Which is like, I feel like it's a double-edged sword too, right? Because on one hand, Tom Holland looks like a high schooler. I never
Definitely.
bought Tobey Maguire as a high schooler.
No.
Maybe. You know, but like,
What is it?
Was
I
he
forget the
30 in the
actor's-
first one?
yeah, or he was
late
pushing.
20s, maybe? I mean, he
I
was.
forget the Flash Thompson actor in the first one, but he definitely
He
was
looked
like a
40.
40-year-old. He was a 40-year-old.
Joe
He's balding,
Manganiello.
like,
Okay, then yeah, he was a 50.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
40. He
Yeah.
looked 40. Yeah. He looked like he could have been the gym teacher.
oh no, I'm thinking about the other Flash Thompson from the Andrew Garfield series too. That
I
guy.
don't even remember who that was. Who was
Right,
that?
but they
actor?
have this.
The first Flash Thompson looked like he had just come off the boat from World War II.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Like I said, he could have been the gym teacher.
I do think there's a level of pulling back though, because like here's a high schooler portrayed by someone that actually looks like a high schooler. Well, and they themselves weren't far away from high school, right? At that point, I think I want to say he was like 19.
I think he
During
was
the
18 or
production
19. He was definitely the
Yeah.
right age.
He was
looked
young,
the
yeah.
right
He
age.
was-
No, you're absolutely right about that. It is a very bright movie. Is it unfair of me to compare this to the Raimi stuff? I don't know. I just hold those first two in such a high regard.
There's
I
one
think-
thing too.
Mhm.
Sorry, go ahead, Anton.
I was just gonna say, I think that you can say both statements to be true, that the Raimi films were like the first two Spider-Man films were exceptional, but that this film also looks different and does feel different, because also let's remember that Feige and Watts both agreed they're going to take a different direction with the Spider-Man. In the
Right.
production, it was very deliberate. Hey, what do we already have too much of in the previous Spider-Man films? It's Spider-Man web slinging through New York. It's Spider-Man getting bit by the spider. It's Spider-Man having to go through a lot of emotional turmoil to become Spider-Man, and they didn't want to go that route again. And so what is Disney great at doing? And at the time, it was putting together these MCU style films, which have a very distinct look and feel, and just putting that spin on Spider-Man. And I feel like that's what we get. And, Ivan, you had this word that you mentioned on our call that I think really describes this well. It's very bubblegum pop feeling.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
that's how I would really describe the Spider-Man.
I think if we put the three of the movies put together, there's a gradual, if slow paced, like graduation to the point where we're getting to a bloodier Spider-Man, for lack of a better term, towards the end of this trilogy. But for this, I at the time I remember thinking it was a great like very light tone compared to the brutal consequences we're about to see with Infinity War. So I almost have to think that it might have been very intentional to set it up this way, because then we get that moment with Spider-Man's character within Infinity War, which from my understanding went from being very minimal, having him in there, to like now he has a much bigger role in it. So I have to wonder if that was ultimately the plan in Feige's mind, to be like introducing this very soft Spider-Man. Because I feel, and I've told you I think on our call, but like I feel like these three movies is almost like him having his Uncle Ben moment in slow motion up until the
Mhm.
end, and then finally we're past that threshold.
Yeah, I think conceptually as a film, or as like a theme across films, that makes sense. I think like that's a cool through line. But I think just, again, going back to this film, just as it's standalone, there's just, I can see why it can feel jarring to have this very different vibe and feel. Like it's very fast. Peter talks a mile a minute. I feel like his brain's going a mile a minute, and all the conversations do feel like high schoolers having conversations together, which,
Yeah.
hey, it's totally spot on. But there is the MCU side of this, which is, how does this fit into the greater MCU? And I feel like that also is pretty distinct feel, is how much influence the greater MCU has on the Spider-Man story. Instead of Spider-Man having its own individual story and storyline, and it's really being driven by Spider-Man and his motivations, it's some of that, but there's a really big hanging, that like shadow of Tony Stark and his involvement in the greater MCU.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great point. You're getting into the second reason then, the Iron Man Jr. problem. It's exactly what you said. Now, again, I understand why this happened. The primary mandate for this film was make Spider-Man fit into the rest of the MCU. This was never going to be a standalone Spider-Man story, like a true like the Tobey Maguire ones, like the Andrew Garfield, like they truly existed like on their own island because the studios that made them at the time, Sony, they didn't have any other way of doing it, right? Here, it's the inverse of that. How do we fit? They had already about as directly as possible fit Spider-Man into the Avengers in the Captain America Civil War movie. And we all liked that. Like, we were singing his praises when we reviewed that film. But here, he has the opportunity to get his own film. And Anton, I know what you mean. Stark is all over this film. And I don't know how I feel about it because it has an incredible emotionally draining payoff at the end of Infinity War, right? The relationship between these two characters. When Spider-Man like vanishes, like it shook me in the theater. It really did. But he does feel like Iron Man Jr. in this film. He's constantly being helped by Stark. I found it boring.
I found it to be, I think on the surface I agree, because I think there's too much reliance on him. And the one point that I think for me sticks out like a sore thumb is the fact that the actual iconic red and blue suit is built by Tony versus Spider-Man. So I think on that point, that's my big gripe about this movie. I think in terms of like the whole point of this, to me, was more so like this was kind of his kind of pointing out the fact that like you have the Avengers dealing with these big level threats. I think what was it during the boat sequence or the whole like Staten Island ferry thing. I think at the end of it, there's a line in dialogue where Tony basically says he had called somebody to deal with them. So there was already he was taking care of the sales, the arm sales thing already. That being said, though, I do feel like there's a tinge of this movie, especially towards the end when he's dealing with the Vulture, and he's a bigger threat than I think Tony Stark even thought about. Although not as big of a threat that he's untouchable or something. But I do think that here's where he starts to kind of get the distinction of like there's the threats that the Avengers would take care of, and then there's street level threats or this kind of threat that they may not be batting as much of an eye onto as they maybe should, which should be like the realization of the whole need for a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man versus like someone that's going off into space and doing all these, fighting all these wizards and monsters and all that stuff. Because we start the movie with him being like, I want to be like he has his sights set on being an Avenger. And I think the experience of the movie should serve to teach him that like there's more to it than just that, or maybe those are grander stakes, and then there's other problems to deal with, I guess.
I like Iron Man.
He saves the day in this one, doesn't he?
Yeah, I mean Robert Downey Jr. is so charming.
Yeah, he earned that $10 million, no doubt.
Yeah, and especially by 2015, by 2017. It's fair to say that there's no fatigue for Tony Stark as Iron Man. Everyone still loves him. It's a good inclusion.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't really know how to feel about it because there was no other version of Spider-Man that we were going to get from this Sony Marvel deal. It was always just going to be him fitting into this already established universe with the Avengers. If anyone was expecting another film along the lines of the Raimi stuff or the Andrew Garfield stuff, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
This is probably best case scenario because I don't think that, like, I know I've sounded a little negative. I don't think there's anything bad in this film at all. I think it's fine. I think the set pieces are fine. The ferry sequence probably should have been the most exciting. And then it's just, but it's Iron Man ends up saving the day. It's like, I wish there was like 10% less Iron Man in this movie.
I agree. Also, I would have liked some direct confrontation between Iron Man and the Vulture to just kind of set up a little bit of that.
That's what you think is going to happen on the ferry because they both are more or less there at the same time, and they never they never even exchange words, right?
No,
They don't, and it's insane because how much is the Vulture just a product of directly from Tony?
He shit talks Stark the whole film. What was John Watts and the writers doing? You have Downey and Keaton in the same movie, and you don't put them on screen together for even a minute. What are you doing?
I think that's a total different reason that I'm like, why wasn't that put in? Like, that's
I haven't understood that there was a concept that was supposed to happen at some point, but then like
it seems like a no-brainer, right? I mean,
yeah. From my understanding, there was scheduling issues with getting Robert Downey Jr. involved, and I think his team thought there was going to be less of a commitment to be on set versus what the story demanded.
Was he even on set with Tom Holland at any point? It looked like a green screen edition. When he's like floating in the air around the ferry and he's like, "Hey kid, I saved the day." It's like they weren't even on the same set.
Well, they have that one interaction afterward.
That's true.
That
they do, where he hugs him.
Yeah. It's
really funny.
Well, where he thought he just sent his suit and not himself over, and it turns out that he pops out of the Iron Man shell.
Oh shit! Sorry, I was talking about in the car. Remember where he thinks Tony's hugging him, and he's like, "Nope, just get in the door."
Nope, just that's pretty hilarious.
I would have wanted a confrontation because I feel like the Vulture is a product of Tony Stark's dismissiveness of like the actions that he takes affecting other people. And throughout the whole movie, like, here's Peter Parker being like, "Hey, there's this threat," and then Tony's kind of like, yeah, whatever. So I kind of wanted that to be proven true at some point, where it's like, oh, right, like, and I feel like that direct confrontation could have served that, and then having the rest of the movie play out the same way, then basically, like, you kind of prove out the Peter Parker was right, like. You weren't paying as much attention to this sort of thing, and it didn't play out that well. So I feel like that point still gets delivered. It's just not as strong as it would have been if the story had maybe serviced it a little bit better. Also, Marissa Tomei is hot. I just want to
throw that in there.
She is.
I throw that in.
She is. All the they really hold back with the jokes in this one too.
They should have gone way.
I mean, this is the sanitized like the nuclear arsenal of jokes they could do.
Like, Tony's, hey, Mr. Stark, you're visiting again?
Mr. Stark, were you here last night around 2? He looks out the window and he sees Stark leaving. Like, Mr. Stark, is that you?
Hey, Mr. Stark, what are you eating? Is that my aunt's lasagna? We had lasagna last night.
Tony stops at the convenience store that gets like destroyed. Yeah, Tony stops there to buy rubbers.
Peter does not get in trouble for that, by the way.
No.
The bodega getting destroyed?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess because they have him on camera. Well, he didn't technically cause the damage.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they never bring that up again. He's like, well, nobody got killed. He's like,
that's very lucky.
I'm gonna say one thing too. Like, as a New Yorker that grew up here, went to school here, there's a high level of appreciation I have of that world building for the high school. His little like supporting cast around him. I haven't seen a modern movie nail the amount of diversity in a New York City public high school that this movie delivers on. It's almost like, and mind you, like New York itself, there's little sequences like the bodega scene, like the areas where him and Ned are walking and talking. Like, there's certain points where I'm like, I could tell exactly which shots are actually shot in New York versus the ones that aren't. But it's enough New York for me to buy into the fact that this is New York, which I always appreciate, because there's been other examples of movies where it's like, oh, it takes place in New York, but I'm like, it really doesn't. But that world building aspect, I have a fond appreciation for, because I feel like, especially like Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's high school setting did not feel like a New York City high school setting at all. It felt very disconnected from that sort of, especially somebody who lives in Queens or goes to school in Queens. Like, there's a certain expectation of reality there.
It was probably filmed in Santa Monica.
What, the high school scenes?
In the Tobey Maguire ones? Yeah, probably.
Oh, yeah.
But no, I agree with you. Like, this does feel like some real school stuff. because of the cast too. I mean, to your point,
Yeah.
other than
The character.
I didn't know that was Flash until the movie was over and I saw the credits.
Dude, I didn't either.
Because did they say his name? Or maybe, I don't know.
You know what he is, though?
very...
He's Flash Thompson for the Tech Bro era. I feel like that's
I was going to say he's a very different kind of bully, where Flash Thompson in the Raimi movies is your typical, like, that's a bully.
That's why I didn't know it was Flash. I just, he doesn't come across as a bully at all. He's just a dick.
Well, I think this is a modern bully. It's like, I'm a bigger nerd than you. Do you think you can come on my turf?
I think it's like, what was it? One of my buddies in when we were doing our podcast together here in New York, I feel like it's a lot more of a diverse space for who you're going to school with. And I think that the level of expectations for like what a bully is here is very different than like a Midwestern, Midwest US or like non metro US schools.
Lawrence.
It's a very different experience.
I think that, I mean, let's be fair, there are definitely still like traditional bullies. Bullies have also evolved into cyberbullying.
But again, this film couldn't go near the violence part of it. They weren't going to do that.
No, but I think that spin on it, like subverting the kind of bully Flash Thompson is, I think that's fun. I think that's funny.
I didn't even realize it was bullying, so I can't agree.
Does it undercut his future character though? I guess if they want to do something with him,
I don't even know why you need him as a character in the film.
As Agent Venom? No, I don't know if you knew that, Pat. Flash Thompson in the comic books becomes a Venom type character.
Sounds wonderful.
It actually is.
Well, so just really quick comparison, or just I think that subversion of what bullies are in this film really does remind me of the same concept in man, this is torture, but it was 21 Jump Street, and then bullies in that high school are just massive nerds, or at least the cool kids are massive nerds
until Channing Tatum punches the one in the face.
And then it's a hate crime.
Yeah, it's a hate crime.
That's actually a good comparison, though. Yeah. Like, I feel like bullying has changed. It's evolved.
Yeah, bullying has changed. Being cool has changed.
Well, I'll tell you what didn't feel realistic for me in terms of high school. Laura Harrier may be gorgeous. She looks way older than Tom Holland. She was 27 when this was filmed. She looks so much older than him. I was wondering, like, is this legal? And also, if you want to talk unrealistic, sophomore boys don't date female seniors. That doesn't happen.
I was gonna say, I don't know how realistic it would have been for Peter to seal that deal on a date.
Not. Also, her not having a date either. It's like, that's not believable.
My favorite plot twist of the movie with her though was the fact that, like, I think they always say her name with her last name, right? The whole movie.
Liz Allen.
Liz Allen, like for whatever reason. And then at the end, you get that twist with Adrian Toomes being her father. And I'm like, wait, that's definitely a change. I did not really expect that.
Definitely didn't expect that. That was a great twist.
Yeah. But by the way, two distinct characters from the comics. There is a Liz Allen and there is an Adrian Toomes, but they were not related.
But they were not related, yeah.
I like how they did it here. It was a genuine shock, and it leads to like the best sequence in the movie.
Yeah,
which is Michael Caine's reappearance, or Michael Caine. Michael Caine. What if it was Michael Caine?
Let me tell you right now, you're the Spider-Man.
I swear to God, I'll kill you. I'll kill you dead.
Did you know, Spider-Man, that your great-grandfather used these tunnels for the Underground Railroad?
He worked for the anti-Underground Railroad. He supported slavery and wanted to return them all to their rightful owners.
God, why are these impressions so spot on? Now I kind of want you to go through the whole
Master Wayne
Thief of Gems story that he went into in Dark Knight.
Wanted to watch the world burn.
I'm sorry I didn't help you, Master Wayne, when you broke your back, but then you went to that prison and you were able to fix it with just hanging from a rope from the ceiling.
Have you guys gone through Dark Knight Rises?
Michael Caine as the Vulture is great. I want that now.
Tony Stark, fucking tosser.
Oh, we got the bit. I got people to feed.
I got people to fate.
He's got to wear the classic comic costume too, with the little like
With the
weird
bird mask.
Yeah.
Well, no. In the comic, he had a what is it? A skin tight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. In a way, Michael Keaton's already worn that in Birdman.
You're right. Yeah, Birdman. Great shout. Yeah, Michael Caine not in this movie. It is definitely Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? I don't even.
1 sec. I need to let the dog. I need to let my dogs out. Be right back.
All right.
The scene in the car where
It's
he
great.
reveals
It's
what he's hinting.
It's great. This film does not use Michael Keaton enough. It doesn't use Michael Caine at all.
No, I wanted more. I definitely wanted more of I wanted more dialogue. Like I enjoyed the little warehouse scene in was it Queens or Brooklyn where they end up having the confrontation and he activates his wings and traps Peter there. That was the closest I thought I had where I was like, okay, this is a great. Like I like that they called back to the comics, like the half face, half mask thing in the water and all that. But I would have appreciated more dialogue with Michael Keaton or an actual fight with him during that. But yeah, it's just and to me, to be honest, like I feel like whether it's the MCU or the past Spider-Man movies, maybe taking Andrew Garfield's movies out of there, but Spider-Man always has some of the best villains for these types of movies.
Yes,
and I feel like they do such a good job with them. They're very fleshed out. And for the most part, they've been cast really well. And I wish they all had the Alfred Molina treatment in Spider-Man 2, because I feel like that's, for me, my favorite Spider-Man movie. But also a really good use of the villain. You know, like, no matter how ridiculous his plan was, but like I really, really liked. I would hope that that movies would kind of learn to play with their villains as much as their heroes in that way. Like I grew to care about Octavius in that movie just as much, and here I wanted to have more of that connection with the Vulture.
I think that they did take a bit from previous understandings of what made Spider-Man villains great, and a lot of that comes down to how connected are they to Peter Parker, right? Like Norman Osborn being directly tied to Peter's best friend. How closely Doc Ock becomes just a mentor to Peter, and even Adrian Toomes in this film, basically the other side of the coin for Peter, like not coming from a very wealthy background, very intelligent, but just be able to just very scrappy and just trying to build something for himself. Yeah. And again, but they're also both very closely tied to Tony Stark. So I think that it was a really intelligent villain design. I think Keaton was a really great choice for the villain. And just also, Pat, I don't know how much you knew about the Vulture beforehand, but even being a comic book fan, I wasn't that excited to know Vulture was going to be the main villain, and I was pleasantly surprised.
I knew very little. I agree with everything you said, except still think he's underused in this film. They don't use him enough. I wanted more Michael Keaton. That's just because he really is great in this role.
I think that the only reason you don't have more Michael Keaton, the only reason you don't have Michael Keaton, Tony Stark, is because you need more film time for Ned. And that's why, there's eventually going to be a Ned solo film because he actually knows magic.
I just want to say shout out to Gwyneth Paltrow for getting herself billed fourth in this film, despite having a 2-minute cameo at the end. She's got a great agent.
That's right.
She's billed fourth in this movie.
She's a very good agent.
Good agent.
Was she in the poster? I feel like I remember. I know Tony Stark takes up like a third of one of those movie posters.
I don't think she's on the poster. She might be, but yeah, she's she's billed for.
It's such a flex if she's also on there.
I only hope Michael Caine got some time on that poster, but
he could have been Uncle Ben, but that would have been weird with Marissa Tomei. Peter, there's only one reason why I married your aunt.
This is a totally, like, I don't know where to fit this in, but do you guys see like a lot of parallels with Batman Beyond and Spider-Man Homecoming?
No,
not really.
So you get this billionaire who meets up with this young protege who takes on his tech, but who has to prove himself of being able to be worthy of the tech, and then starts to become, and then
I mean, now you're
fully
making
accepts
me
a
like
mentor
this
figure.
less because this is so less cool than Batman Beyond.
Yeah, I was just an observation.
Yeah, no,
but-
you're right.
yeah.
That's a really good observation. Why don't we have a Batman Beyond live action movie? We all want that, right?
Because they'd mess it up. That's all I'm
They
saying.
would mess it.
mess
You're
it up.
right. They would.
It was on the table. It was on the table, guys.
Joseph
would
Gordon-Levitt
mess
was
it
going to
up.
be Terry McGinnis.
That
don't.
would have no thanks.
I want Michael Keaton as Bruce. I want
But by the way, it's specifically Joseph Gordon-Levitt with the CGI makeup from Looper.
Oh,
you
all
lost
right.
me.
Last reason. Low stakes. These are pretty low stakes for a Spider-Man movie. We get Peter investigating weapons dealers and then high school events. Pretty boring.
I'm okay with it.
That weapons plot takes a long time to develop.
I mean, is that less about the stakes or just more about the writing?
Both.
All right, so I think it's a product of the writing. Like, if it takes a long time to develop, I do think that the stakes of the film don't necessarily undercut the quality. Shouldn't necessarily undercut the quality of a Spider-Man film. I don't need world-ending stakes to be.
Didn't have to be
a good
world
film.
ending, but what he does really we learn it ultimately doesn't matter. And then the other part of it too, I think they were shackled by the Avengers problem, which is they need to make a setup film to introduce this Spider-Man, not just as a cameo in Civil War, but he gets his own film. It's a stepping stone to a bigger part of this Avengers storyline. So they can't have him do anything too big that would pull him away from the Avengers stuff. It's all about like fitting this into the Avengers stuff.
Yeah, and I think it handicaps the movie a little bit for it. But I also feel like it was designed to be put into that slot too. So if you're watching this as a consumer of the MCU around that time, it's like, all right, this isn't such a big problem. But like taking this movie out of that context, it's a lot more evident of a problem. I will say I've seen footage and scenes of stuff where I feel like it would have made more sense to include. I think, and I suspect at some point the weapons dealing was more of a rampant thing, and they were supposed to. Like, there's a sale of it to kids, I think, if I recall correctly.
Well, there's
an argument that like basically a lot of people are getting their hands on it, and it's becoming a problem.
They hint at this in the Hawkeye miniseries.
The weapons tech or the alien tech is still in the hands of
people that are just
people.
Yeah, they're just selling it on the streets, and there's no oversight. It's not like S.H.I.E.L.D.'s doing anything about it. It's not like the Avengers are doing anything about it.
Right. So I think there were scenes that were supposed to highlight that, and I think the only thing we got was that bank robbery scene, and then the reckless use of it by the first Electro, the guy that gets blown to smithereens by
cut right Tom Hardy.
Yeah, yeah. But like, there's more of a sequence with him, and then there's more of a sequence with the second guy to where the not Electro, the Shocker mantle there.
The Shocker.
I like that actor a lot, Bokeem Woodbine.
Yeah, man. And again, I don't know how much of it I could talk about, but that there's this extended sequence of it, and I think that it would have highlighted a little bit more of that crew. But also, again, the other sequence that I'm thinking about with the first guy would have perfectly like painted out the need for stopping the trafficking or the sale of these weapons, just because it plays more into like you're putting this really dangerous tech in the hands of people that shouldn't have them. So again, like there's just things I feel like they should have included to kind of bring that point home. So to your point, Pat, though, like they don't do that here. They don't show it off as much as they should. And then also ultimately we come up with if the audience isn't seeing it, then the stakes aren't quite as high, or there's not much of an impact in the plot of this movie.
Yeah, I think something that ends up making this film very something that give this film way less weight for me, at least thinking of the Spider-Man Tom Holland films in totality, is there's no it's very inconsequential. Like the whole plot, it doesn't really impact the next film, doesn't totally impact the third film at all. And I'm just disappointed because I really like Michael Keaton Vulture. And then instead of having that being a very influential character or just a theme that helps shape Spider-Man Tom Holland, he just ends up becoming a multiverse joke over the next, several films.
I was going to ask, does he pop up again? Because they keep him alive.
Well, they keep him alive, and then instead there's a lot of hints of him showing up somehow again in the future, because then he ends up in post-credit scenes for like some Sony films, for some Sony Spider-Man villain films. I want to say it was
Morbius.
It was Morbius, and then I want to say there was maybe a reference in one of the Venom films.
Dude, he's not just in the post-credit scene for Morbius. He's like in the movie.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, there's a whole prison scene in the movie, which is like, it's so confusing because I don't know where Morbius is taking place. Apparently, it's I don't know.
It takes place in irrelevancy.
Yeah. It's confusing. That's
on my list of films to never watch.
We haven't covered any of the Sony non-Spider-Man Marvel films.
Anton, I don't know where you're going with this, but based on everything I've heard and read, we have no reason to.
Yeah, but they're just so terrible. And that's all I'm saying. It's just...
Dude, if there's any movies that you guys touch, the only ones that I could see you guys touching is Venom, because the rest of it is just so much...
Well, so that's a funny thing, Ivan. I actually had fun with the first Venom.
That's what I'm saying. You could talk about things with those Venom movies, but outside of that...
Then I was sorely disappointed by the second one, and then the third one was a travesty. That's it.
Yeah, never watched Craven because
you weren't craving any Craven.
Listen, they showed like 17 minutes of it at New York Comic Con the year before it dropped, a couple weeks before the actual movie dropped, and the fact that like after that the audience was just like quiet.
No one was pumped.
And then the director comes out and is like, didn't you guys like that? And everybody's like, yeah.
He's a great director too, J.C. Chandor.
Someone in the crowd, we want Spider-Man.
Why would anyone at Sony think that would do well? No one other than a comic book fan knows what Kraven the Hunter is. No one.
But I don't think that they care. I think that fits under the
definitely don't care.
I think it fits under the category of they need to release something to keep the rights. That's it.
Well, but they could try. There's stuff that they could do. Like, they could have played with the Spider-Man Noir universe. They could have done the Miles Morales thing.
Well, that's why they did that's why they did the Spider-Woman film, right?
Madam Web.
Yeah, Madam Web.
That's a movie I kind of want Pat to watch.
Sydney Sweeney.
I'm good.
I'll pay you to watch it, Pat.
How much?
I'll give you $100 each.
I mean, Pat, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of into it. $100. All right.
I don't know.
All right, we'll table it. I think we're in negotiations right now. We're Sony Marvel right now.
The fact that it's not an outright no gives me some hope.
Even this movie for me is a stretch. Like this movie's so okay. It's okay. Everything in this movie is okay. It's okay.
I think it was a little bit, personally, I think it was a little bit more than okay. But are we getting towards our scores?
I think we're getting there. I'm trying to think of other things to really talk about. It's like set pieces. They're all okay. There's no
fairy scene's probably the biggest, right?
It's the biggest, and then it just ends up with Iron Man saves the day. Like, I was hoping for the train fight sequence in Spider-Man 2, the elevated train.
Right.
Like,
I think
God damn, that's 20 plus years old, and it's one of the best action set pieces in any superhero film ever still. I was hoping for something like that.
I think even in this film, though, the fairy scene, I think as a comic book fan, there's so many scenes in it that are just homages to Spider-Man scenes in general, or Spider-Man comic book covers, which I think were really smartly done. Now, yes, I do agree that it does take a bit of the impact out by having Iron Man save the day, but I think even now it's still a very enjoyable scene. There's a very enjoyable set piece, especially.
There's something missing in this movie, though. And Pat, I think Pat's note here kind of jogs my memory up a little bit. I wanted to see a scene where Spider-Man's protected by the citizens of New York, and Joey Diaz pops up in particular.
If you want to get to Spider-Man, you have to go through me.
What, you think you're a Mets fan? I'm a Mets fan.
We need that moment in the MCU Spider-Man movies. I don't care when it comes, but I need Joey Diaz to make a cameo in the Spider-Man film again.
That's why I mentioned the train fight. It's like this incredible. That is just like that is S tier stuff for superhero movies.
Yeah. The
Thinking
stakes are high. Creative
Spider-Man
use
2,
by the
so
villain.
good.
I love Spider-Man 2.
It's an amazing movie.
And and like I think this is coming very full circle to our first reason, kind of bleeding in, is because this film is very safe. It is in the MCU style. There isn't really a lot of room to dive into very emotional experimentation with a set piece that grand, or kind of emotional stakes that really have us feeling danger for our main character. And that's a compromise that had to be made for this film, that it does put one arm behind its back. And I think that's always going to make this Spider-Man film feel less grand than I feel like it could have been.
Can I ask you about something too? Like, I think you've seen the other MCU Spider-Man movies, right? I know Anton has.
No.
Have you, Pat? No.
I saw a little bit of
No Way Home,
which
with Jamie Foxx.
yes, and I have to tell you, I'm sorry if this will hurt you, Ivan. I thought it was truly terrible. Like the absolute worst example of member berries I've ever seen in a film, where they're like, well, let's just bring all the other actors back. It'll be fun. People like them. I shut it off.
I feel like that one's a victim of the whole multiverse angle they went for. I think my favorite one out of these movies has been the second one, the one with Jake Gyllenhaal.
I have not seen that one.
I think that's as closest as we've gotten so far to like traditional Spider-Man, but you still have a fish out of water element with that because it's set in the UK. That one might be an enjoyable one for you, but I do agree. Like, I enjoyed the third one for the nostalgia hit, but at the same time, that's what's kind of the big pillar holding it up too.
Ratings then, or wait, you had a larger question, Ivan? I think.
No, I was just more so like I think they gradually, as we go along with this trilogy, I think the movies do a little bit of a better job managing or getting us to like that traditional, like almost Raimi feel of Spider-Man, with like Spider-Man tackling his own. He's a lot more independent, I guess is what I'm trying to say, as we go along. The quality of the movies kind of is what it is, but I do think that second movie especially kind of stands out as a pretty good one. I was just curious because
we're gonna cover it eventually.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, especially on that second one, Pat.
All right then, ratings. You want to go first, Ivan, as the guest? You don't have to.
Sure.
Don't ever feel pressured to go first.
Are you opening that text I just sent you, Ivan?
Let me look at it.
Anton, are you texting behind my back to the guest on our?
It's on the group chat.
I sent it to you too.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
Ned's the standout character in this movie because Spider-Man actually gets a best friend that kind of acts like a best friend. So he took one for the team at the end there. No, for my rating for this movie, honestly, like I said at the beginning of this episode, I think I'm a little biased on this. I'm a big Spider-Man fan. I was waiting for this character to show up in the MCU. It was something I didn't think we would get, to be honest. But then after Civil War, obviously, all bets were off. I'd give it a solid B+ for my personal enjoyment. I do agree with a lot of the criticisms. I think there's too much dependency on the fact that we're in the MCU. I think there's maybe a little bit too much Iron Man. I think there's too many missing aspects of the traditional Spider-Man story. All that said, to me, this was a very fun movie to experience in the moment. I thought there wasn't really much of another entryway into the MCU for a solo film for Spider-Man. I would have done it a little bit differently, to be honest with you. I would have done it as a prequel to Civil War and just have him be in that homemade suit throughout the entire thing and just end it with Tony Stark coming up to him and essentially pulling a Nick Fury on him. That's how I would have treated it, to be honest. But this is a Spider-Man that's set in a lived-in world where he's not the main focal point of the story. He's not the first superhero coming out. I thought, and we didn't get too much into it, but I personally feel like Tom Holland is a pretty good blend of the attributes that I liked in Tobey Spider-Man and Andrew Spider-Man. Like Tobey's Peter Parker is like Peter Parker to me. And for me, and the way that Andrew Garfield riffed and played with the Spider-Man character while he's in costume, I thought was the perfect way to play Spider-Man as a mass vigilante persona. And I thought Tom Holland did a pretty good job of trying to blend those two together. That being said, I feel like he didn't find his full footing up until the next movie. But yeah, this is a lot of stuff that I feel like worked for me. And yeah, at a B plus, it's one of those movies I go back to here and there. It's not something that I'll say is like a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but it holds a special place for me. So B plus.
Anton, do you think that Peter Parker and his aunt lived near Julius Levinson?
Mayhaps.
Now you can give your rating.
Okay, I have a lot of fun with this film, and for me it really comes down to that bubblegum pop optimism that I mentioned earlier in the film. I love that description for it, and I love that aesthetic for Spider-Man, and that optimism I think is a really nice touch to a very fun and optimistic character, even though it doesn't have the same touch with the edge of the original Raimi films. I'm not going to say that should detract from the enjoyment that I had with this film itself. I think Tom Holland does a great job as a high schooler that has a ton of energy, that is Spider-Man. I think personally I do have a bit of a gripe with how much it's held back by being just another vehicle for the MCU storyline versus just being a standalone Spider-Man film, which has so much weight to it. And I think like that's why I feel like there's a lot holding this film back. I love Michael Keaton as the Vulture. I would have loved to have seen more of him. In terms of rewatchability for me, like I will go back and rewatch this film just because it's a very good time. It's very easy to watch with my family. I think there's nothing about it that I find offensive, but I would expect more from my Spider-Man films. Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad film like at all. It's just I would expect more, and I think coming back to a really really early statement, this is one of the most, if not a top 3 popular superhero. And if that is a standard that we have for Spider-Man, well, I would hope that we give him his own treatment without needing Iron Man to save the day. I go ahead and put this one at a B minus, but go enjoy yourself some Tom Holland because he's Spider-Man for now still.
Bubblegum pop is a brilliant way of putting it, because this movie is fun. Holland is likable as Peter Parker. Michael Keaton is a solid villain. The teenage comedy beats mostly work. But dramatically, almost nothing happens here. And that's because primarily what this film was designed to do, which is just fit into the MCU as cleanly as possible. I think in that regards, it is very successful. Like if that's what Marvel wanted to do, they succeeded. If you're looking at it from that point of view, I think the film does a very good job of fitting this version of Peter Parker into the world of Tony Stark. But that's precisely why I don't like it. Spider-Man is way too big of a character. He deserves way more than what this kind of movie is. This is Spider-Man with the training wheels on. This is Disney Channel Spider-Man, that phrase that I keep using. Now, that being said, I don't think there's anything bad in here, to your point, Anton. There's nothing offensive in here. I think the action is fine. It's competent, it's pleasant, it's totally disposable. It doesn't really take any risks because it was never supposed to take any risks. It was a setup for something else. So I think there's just kind of a ceiling on what this film could actually be. It's not something that I would ever seek out on my own again, but I would watch it if it were on, because it's a pretty easy movie to get through, right? If you have plenty of jokes, and the action scenes are pleasant enough and entertaining enough to watch. And like I said, I really do like Tom Holland. Like, he's a good Spider-Man. I like his personality. He's age appropriate for the character, which is, which is an issue with some of the older versions of Spider-Man. This is like right down the middle for me. This is a very classic C movie for me. And that's it.
Well, here we are.
That's it for Spider-Man Homecoming. Ivan, this was a treat.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I think this is the most I've spoken about the trailer process for this movie.
Fascinating.
No, Ivan, love getting all of your insight on that. Thank you again. I think our listeners will also love all of these insights when this episode drops. I am just super, super stoked for people to learn. And I'm just, again, very appreciative to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Well, that is it for Spider-Man Homecoming. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on Why Wasn't It Better?